Welcome back to the Pot Smoker's Bible. My name is Zion. I'm the author of the Pot Smoker's Bible, which contains the prophetic book of Zion, where I get my name and authority. It comes from the Ketuvim, or Old Testament, of the Hebrew Bible. I used the King James Version of the Christian Bible to put together the prophecy of Israel from the scattered testimony of the various prophets of the Old Testament. And it became the Book of Zion, a very accurate description of the year 2020. And in order to publish it, I wrote the Pot Smoker's Bible. Now, the reason why I call it the Pot Smoker's Bible is because it was written, the prophecy itself was written for pot smokers. Yeah, why it was written. That was exactly who it was written to. Because it contains all the necessary proof for us to gain our freedom, which we, of course, have already started to do with all of the states legalizing marijuana for both religious or for both political or medical and personal reasons. Um, but that's just the beginning. And don't think that just because we're starting to legalize pot means that what I'm doing doesn't matter, because that's exactly the time in the prophecy that I come about, is when we've already started to end the oppression through our own means. And it is this ending it through our own means that is a main point of the prophecy. We have to stand up for ourselves. We have to be willing to stand up to the authorities and say, prove it. Because we have all the proof. All the proof that we need is contained in this book and in the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights. Now, the war on drugs may be a worldwide war, but it originated in the United States. And to end the war on drugs, we must first prove that the very origins of that war were unjustified. Easily done. All you have to do is show the movie Reefer Mania, and then superimpose next to it the show Cops. And we'll see whether or not the propaganda that began the prohibition of marijuana was ever justified. In light of the evidence of actual similar events happening in the real world. Now, Reefer Madness purported that if you got high, that you were very, very likely to go home and kill your parents and rape your whatever and just be a diabolical criminal. That all the violence was because of the marijuana. And i.e., it follows suit that all the other drugs that became part of the prohibition would fall in line with that. So we can extrapolate that because the marijuana propaganda said that we were violent criminals that were capable of murdering people for no justified reason, extrapolates to everybody else who does drugs for the same reason, because it all became drugs are bad because the government said so. Propaganda shows us that diabolical, terrible people use drugs. But the reality is, Cops. The show Cops is the true reality of the atrocities perpetuated by the evils of drugs, or the true evil of drugs, which is the war against the drugs. Because the only true statistical evidence of murder by drugs has been the murdering of the Black Lives people by the police in their pursuit of the criminal drug users. There is no proven violence from drugs other than the prohibition against them. If the war on drugs had never been enacted, there would never have been a problem with any of the drug statistics that we have today and the terrible persecution of my people for things that they've never done. And I can easily prove it. Let's go back to 1939, or even further back to 1915, when the actual first laws against the prohibition of drugs began. Now, the very first time that drugs were made illegal in the United States was cocaine, because snake oil salesmen were killing people by lacing poison with cocaine and getting people fucked up on cocaine and then having them die of the poison that they added to it. Amateur chemists killing people by lacing poisons with cocaine. That's why the war on drugs, that's where it started. Very legitimate, by the way. I would have made that law a law too, but in a different way. I would have made snake oil salesmen illegal and kept the drug, because it wasn't the drug's fault that the greed of the traveling salesman forced America to die from cocaine. So the whole premise of the war on drugs is fucking stupid, immoral, and invalid. It's just not real. The prohibition of alcohol in the 1920s. How'd that happen? Because a bunch of overzealous religious fanatics bombasted their fucking husbands who had power to make it illegal so that their high and mighty social order could be enforced upon the public. And what was the result? The roaring 20s. Violence, greed, debauchery in the name of profit. The police state as we know it originated in the 1920s because of the prohibition of alcohol. Everything prior to that was Black Lives Matter. Poor Lives Matter. Because the police were killing the blacks long ago, long before the war on drugs ever started. But the very prohibition against marijuana was enacted to allow Louisiana's government to suppress the blacks. So it's all about Black Lives Matter, believe me. And all of this was done. Why? And by what right? Because if we look at the Bill of Rights, which is the basis of the Constitution, we find absolutely no validity for any law against any drug. Because drug use, okay, now the cocaine, like I said, the cocaine in the 1915s or in the 19 teens, that prohibition should have been outlawing the snake oil salesman. But instead of locking up the salesmen who were killing people by poisoning them with things other than cocaine, they made cocaine illegal. What the fuck was that all about? I didn't look into it, so I don't know, but that'll be an interesting conversation for another day. But in 1939, when Hollywood put out Reefermania, or thereafter, or whatever year that was pure propaganda to incite public panic against a non-existent threat, marijuana, so that Texas could deport Mexicans, prejudiced against the Browns, and Texas and Louisiana could imprison blacks, prejudiced, criminal profiling in both cases, which is illegal. Um, and this was all based on the need to make hemp illegal so that Dow Chemical could fill our oceans with bottled garbage crap called plastic. So, propaganda was used to set up a lie to create a non-existent threat, because prior to 1939 there was never a single instance of violence being perpetuated by the use of marijuana. Try to find one, because I did and failed. There are no statistics about marijuana prior to 1939. And in 1939, it was decided arbitrarily by the United States government that marijuana was a deadly menace that had to be done away with at all costs. And that was done through media hysteria. And all of this violates the Constitution because the Constitution was based on the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights guarantees us certain inalienable, unavoidable rights. They have not the right to take away our right to pursuit of happiness, to pursuit of self-determination, or to the right of privacy. They do not have the right to regulate commerce, to impede the natural flow of commodities in an open market. They don't have that right. They never did. They took it from us illegally. And all we have to do in order to end the war on drugs is to stand up and call foul and say, prove it in a court of law. Prove to me in a court of law that you have the justifiable rights by the Bill of Rights and that document alone to justify the war on drugs. Because every constitutional amendment that has ever been passed must adhere to the Bill of Rights. If it violates the Bill of Rights in any way, shape, or form, then it is not a constitutional law. It is unconstitutional, invalid, and a treasonous act of the state against the people of the United States of America. So, my friends, I suggest that every person who has ever been involved in the war on drugs on the wrong end sue the government in any and every court to justify their right under the Constitution. Let them throw you out of one court, and we'll put it into an appellate court, and we'll go all the way up to the Supreme Court. It'll never get that far, but it'll be fun watching them scurry as they try. Because you see, that court case is coming. But in order for us to have a fair trial, we have to have judges that are impartial, at least. Or, I should say, who have the motivation to not side with the government. So the government of the United States cannot try us in this case because they're the defendants. They can't try their own defendants. So I've asked my God, the Gray, to come to Earth in order to have an honest court hearing concerning the war on drugs, to see if the United States of America ever had the right to wage such a war against its people, and to address the issue of all the harm that has been done to both the United States American citizens and particularly the citizens of Zion, who are the criminals in this illegal police action by the United States of America against a segment of its own population. So, everyone who does drugs, has ever done drugs, has ever known anybody who has ever done drugs, or who is related to anybody who does drugs. Don't you think it's about time that the United States of America justified the war on drugs and the billions and billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, which has gone to the escalation and maintenance of this illegal police action enacted by the state against a segment of its population? May the Gray watch over you, guide you, protect you, and keep you from all harm. And may they teach you right from wrong. May you be worthy of them. May your thoughts, words, and deeds reflect truth, good, and light, the unicorn way. Find your joy and pursue it. That will help to make you happy. Choose your guild wisely. If you get high, stay happy and high. You have every right and reason to. I know. I wrote the books. My name is Zion. I love you all way too much to ever say goodbye, so I'll say later now.